we're in a competition. I won. I think it was the first year that I won, or second. I don't remember well, but then you were like, hey, like, this is great, and I see like you should learn more about coffee. I think we were going to Atlanta, to compete, and there was like, you should come to like just like the West regionals, and there's like these legendary guys like Devin and
Devin PD and Ryan Wilbur,
Ryan Wilberg, and like
all those
Chris
Intelli
Baca.
guys.
And they were like, these legends, and it was the like the intelligentsia time, like like it was like growing a lot, and and I think that's the reason why I went to Los Angeles, and we like spent time there, and it was like I went to Intelligentsia and Stump Downs and all of those guys, and all that time, which they're like different coffee shops at the time. And we stay at Devin's house, I believe, a couple of days. Or
Devin and Ryan, I feel like we went to Santa Cruz
as well.
And Chris, and was Chris there? Jared was there. I don't remember if Chris was there yet.
We stayed at Jared, and Jared, it was on Cat and Cloud. It was on. He used to work for Verve, and Verve is just like this small place in Santa Cruz, not like now, And it was a really great fun trip, and that was the first time that I tasted Guatemala coffee as I have never tasted it before, and I fell in love with Guatemalan coffee. As stupid as it sounds, I was like, oh, this is really good. Where is it from? And it was like, Guatemala, like, what the fuck?
That's why when I was asked to come to Guatemala by Ana Cafe, I was like, of course, yes. I mean, we all of us in North America, especially the West Coast, we had been drinking Guatemalan coffees for so long, and it was one of the favorite. It was a very dependable, because when a cafe was serving a Guatemalan coffee, you had a pretty good idea it was going to be pretty good. It was going to taste good. It was going to be well processed, probably well roasted.
And what was your first impression when you drink a coffee and like you were so excited? You were like, oh yes, I want an espresso. And they were
look, I had been to Mexico already, and like it's just different in the origin countries because the roasting was not as evolved yet, and was it's so cultural differences. What people think tastes good is so different from country to country, and continent to continent. And like having been to like the WBC, you have to just sort of set aside kind of your personal preference and evaluate the way it's structured on the score sheet. But yeah, it was all the countries then, it was everyone was drinking really dark roast, like dark really dark roast, like dark. It wasn't good. It was highly bitter, highly astringent, and sweetness and acidity were really hard to find. And I still remember the days of, I think like Panama or Nicaragua, one of those countries, and like doing a judge's calibration and trying to, they were tasting acidity. And to me, it was like, oh, this, there's some acidity in this coffee. And they were like, oh, terrible, sour. It tastes like sour, like lemons, like, oh no. And it was really difficult to try to get them to understand that the difference. What tasted good to me is acidity. They were registering as, this is a negative, this is bad, it's sour, and it was a real challenge to try to calibrate, like understand why it tasted to them sour, and to me and some other like white guys it tasted like acidity. That we had come to understand that this is a good thing, and if you can get an espresso to extract some acidity and sweetness, you're doing something right.
And it's really, I mean, it's interesting because for me it's funny, and it probably, like you say, like, oh, that was ages ago. But for some people that are new in coffee, still they think like that, and it's really hard. Like even for specialty coffee shops, like you're like, people still like, oh, this is too acidity for me, like, and it's like, like no, like acidity is good and like sweetness, um, but some of the things that also it was because of roast, but some of like when I started like to buy coffees or use coffees for competition, like they were not like you used to buy not the great coffee or not the greatest coffee. It was just like the leftovers, good coffee. Yeah. And that was a lot of things that needed, I mean, besides roast and stuff like that, but it was weird. And when I tasted that coffee and it was La Maravilla, it was a really interesting just to what like that. This is not possible to be tasting like Meyer lemon and like sweetness, and it was like not bitter, and it was so. And I think that's, I mean, not the first one, but probably the second things in my life that I fell in love about drinking espresso, because it was like, oh, this is so like biscuit and like so yummy and then I wanted to bring that, you know, that flavor, that, you know, whatever profile we wanted to hear. And then I remember that we went to Santa Cruz and started drinking espresso. I pulled some shots in Verve with JT. You know what? I'm going to pull some pictures and just put it in that space over there in yours. And then, and yeah. And it was a long trip, but it was a really fun trip because I found like this whole other world. And I think that for me, that was a lesson of life to be better at competition, just to understand what I wanted to extract from coffee. You know, it didn't help me like better technically or whatever, because that you learn, but just to understand like what you want to achieve of a good tasting coffee. That was it.
It was the same. It was the same for me. Like that was the reason I wanted to help make the competitions better, because I wanted people to taste the things I was tasting and like find all these nuances, and that it doesn't have to taste like dark, bitter, strong, you know, those words that people use. And then everyone in coffee I know has that one day where they taste a coffee and they're like, I didn't know it could taste like this. Like I remember a coffee that Bronwyn Cerna had brought from Seattle, and it was the first time I tasted like that geisha thing, and it was like,
yeah,
I was like walking around telling everyone I could find, like I can't believe this coffee, it's changed me. And the competitions were able to do that with espresso, especially. Like it didn't have, you know, you could pull those good shots and the god shots, and like with that color and that crema and the red, you know, streaks and the tiger stripes, all those terms we used to use. And it was like, we all wanted the coffee to be better. And for everyone to be having some standards to like try to make the world of espresso more interesting and exciting, and starting to pull single origins, and not everything has to be a blend, and just like dig into all those. We were all sort of learning together, it felt like, and like the equipment was getting better and the science was getting better, and we were still like so stupid back then. But when you look at now, it's like so easy. There's all these tools that we didn't have, and all this information that we didn't have, and